Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of CyberGangsters CyberSecurity. I've got a very special guest tonight, and I'm going to introduce her real quick, and then I want to share some stuff. So, everyone, if you could please, in the comments, say hello to my guest, Carlota Sage. Carlota, welcome to the CyberGangsters CyberSecurity. How are you tonight?
I am feeling so gangsta. This is awesome. I love that intro.
Let me tell you, I cannot, and I am not kidding. Like, I am beyond elated right now. Like, I am shaking right now because I'm so excited to be here with you tonight. Guys, let me just say real quick. I went to the Stronger 2023 conference, okay, a few weeks back, and I got to see Carlota talking, and I was just like overcome with this. I was like, oh, she's so energetic. She's so enthusiastic. I was like, she's just like, all this stuff was just infectious in a great way. I was like, I feel her energy. And I was like, I need to ask her to come onto the show. And Carlota, you said yes. And I was like, oh. And then you and I talked this morning and I was like, oh my gosh. So it's kind of like, fanboying right now a little bit. Okay. I don't know if you ever had that, but
Yes.
In that. Okay, so let me get that right there out in the open. Okay.
Welcome, fam. I'm just saying, welcome to the fan. That's it.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. What do you call your fan club? Right? The Carlotalettes. I'll be that. Okay. When you start phrasing that, make sure you sign me up for or put me on the mailing list. Okay.
Maybe it's Carlota's Navy. Like somebody is like. Do you remember back in the early days of Twitter? Socks the cat was the cat that was more popular on Twitter than you. Yes. And he had Socks Army. I think maybe I need to have Navy.
Okay, yeah. Okay. I get that. Hey, Saeed, welcome.
Hi, Saeed.
He's watching from Connecticut. Awesome. All right, so if you're new to the channel and you're just joining us for the first time, I'll just give you a little brief synopsis. My name is Jaime Pina, and I am sorry, this loud noise is coming on over here. My name is Jaime Pina. I have been in the IT field for nearly 20 years, and I am committed to learning about cybersecurity and IT and all those things. And so I'm hoping to work hard in the PCI realm, but October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And I wanted to branch out and share about other areas. And Carlota, you're the first person I'm bringing on to kind of do that, okay? And I'm really excited to have you here tonight. And this is going to be the first of many, okay? It's the first of many. But my heart here is to share knowledge with others. I'm not someone who likes to hoard knowledge or information. I was going to say data. I'm a data analyst right now, so that data part will start kicking in later. But I want to share knowledge with the community, with my people. That's what I feel like, right? I feel like I don't want to just consume media. If I can create content and share it with others and others benefit from it, that's what I want to do. And that was also one of the other things about you, Carlota, when I heard you talking, was just the way you were sharing your information. It was just, you talked about it there specifically. It talked about one of the things that stuck out to me. It was turning like the C-suite from oh gosh, I forgot what the word was, but turning them into allies, basically. So
from adversaries into allies.
There you go. Yes, from adversaries to allies. And I was like, ooh, this is great stuff you were talking about. So that was like the technical pieces that you were mentioning. So anyway, everyone, that's me a little bit. That's what I do. And Carlota, will you just share a little bit about yourself with everyone?
Absolutely. Yeah, Jaime, like you, I had 18 plus years in IT and high-tech support organizations before I found cybersecurity, and I totally fell in love with it. I did not realize that's what I'd been looking for my entire career. But my background, my undergrad degree, I'm actually a college dropout at first. I did go back to school eventually. It took me 13 years, but I
dropout, huh?
Well, you do what you got to do, right?
You do.
I grew up poor in Alabama. There was no way my family could afford to send me to school. So I moved to North Carolina eventually, and I got a little day job, and I took, classes at community college in the evenings, paid everything out of pocket for the most part, ended up at North Carolina State University, go Wolfpack. And got my undergrad degree in all things textile chemistry. Now, I put myself through school doing web page development and web development and website development, and we talked about this a little bit this morning.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in college, even though my degree is in textile chemistry and I'm learning about dyes and finishes and fibers and yarns and garments and all this textile stuff, I was going around to little small and mom and pop businesses, and at the time, IBM was charging $5,000 per page to make a website, right? So if you had a main page and a product page and a contacts page, that was $15,000. And I would go around to these little mom and pop shops and say, hey, for $500 in cash and $500 in store credit for the next year, I'll show you how to build your own website and maintain it. I'll help you. You just buy Front Page or Dreamweaver, and I'll help you do that because I had learned to do web pages because I had all these artists, amazing artist friends. I had a killer art collection that wanted a website, and I was like, it can't be that hard. And so that's how I really kind of got into tech. Was that my artist friends didn't know how to make a website, so I stepped up, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of us end up doing is that we just end up stepping up. Right.
And so and it's so funny to say, okay, like when I hear that story, I think that's amazing because I'm gonna make a general assumption here because I always feel like I hear this. I'm always impressed by women, right? Because I feel like women just are so incredibly smart and they just think so differently. Like here in my mind, I'm like, if I need to do something, I just need to figure out how to do it, right? Like, but in a very straightforward way. Here you are like, oh, I can make a little side money off of doing websites. And it doesn't just stop there. You're like, how about 500 for me and then 500 in trade? And I've been in the trade world and I know what that means. And that's kind of fun, to be honest with you. It's kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
And so when I hear your story like that, I'm like, of course, like that, like women just are so stinking creative. I'm always blown away. My wife tells me when she was in her undergrad, she used to, for a little side for her, she would sell lollipops in the dorm rooms and would just sell them like crazy, though, she said. And she was like, okay, she just have a little bag of lollipops and people were always buying them, always. And I was like, now, fast forward that and she has much more creative ideas these years, but still I look at y'all and I think, I'm a knucklehead when I compare myself to y'all. So I just got to say that's creative. Daniel's here. He says hi from DFW. What's up, Daniel? Welcome. Michael's here. Here we go. Hi, everyone. He's from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And then we got Maurice, CyberGangsters. How's it going? I hope you're good. I hope everyone's buckled in because already just your story so far, Carlota, is amazing.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think part of it is, Jaime, we talked about this, I'm half Filipino, right? My mother's from a small village outside of Angeles City. Like when I went to visit her village in 2020, I had to drive like 45 minutes to get to a bank, right? Like now when I went back in 2023, post-pandemic, now there's actually a bank in the village, but that's a very recent development. And so we come from these cultures that we're often very poor, and we have parents who have dreams. They come to the US and they give us a really good work ethic, and they give us this, hey, if I can get to the US, I can do anything kind of attitude.
Right.
But at the same time, we're kind of fighting. When I dropped out of college, I mentioned I was a college dropout. We're also kind of fighting that culture war of our own. And when I dropped out of college, my Asian mother was horrified, of course.
Yes.
And she was in tears, and she was like, "You'll never amount to anything." And I just, it's such an Asian.
It's not funny, but it's you can't help but laugh.
It's so funny. No, and I said to her, I'm never going to amount to anything that you care about, Mom, and I'm okay with that. I need you to be okay with that. And I don't know where I got that, but my mom's raised a strong, independent young woman, and then she was really annoyed when I didn't obey her. So.
Like that kind of backfired on me there. I totally get it. I totally get that. My grandma, when she immigrated here to the US, her contribution was she was going to open up cantinas around Texas. And so she opened up bars, legit bars. She employed people drank at her bars. I mean, she was pretty successful as far as, coming in and doing something like that. So more power to it.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I got to not meet you, but I got to hear you speak at the Stronger conference, right? It
Right.
was very
Right.
impressed, very cool. One of the
Thank
things that
you.
my journey has shown me is especially through the cybersecurity realm, right? I talked about how
Mhm,
my lens is really specific on PCI DSS, right? Which for
mhm,
many of
mhm,
you who you don't know is payment card industry data security standards. If
mhm,
you're a business that accepts credit cards, you have to be compliant, and you have to be
mhm,
compliant every year. Okay. With that being said, there are levels in this program or in this compliancy where if you rank
mhm,
level one, that means you do like over 6 million transactions a year in credit
mhm,
cards, and you have to have an extensive compliancy program initiated for you to validate and give to your bank that
mhm,
says we are compliant.
mhm,
Having
mhm,
said that, there's a piece in there that I've learned is that you do have to have this buy-in, and it
mhm,
is from your upper management. And when I say upper
mhm,
management, I mean usually in corporations we have what we call a C-suite, right? Like your CEOs, your CIO, your
right.
CISO.
Mhm,
You understand that, and so
mhm,
you have to
mhm.
have their buy-in into it, right?
Yeah.
You have to have their
You have to
support.
have buy-in from everyone,
Yeah,
realistically. Like, you gotta get the buy-in initially from the C-suite to get the permission, to roll with it, but then as you're rolling things out that affect other people's work, you gotta get their buy-in too, right? And where I see people and where I've been successful is that I give everyone a lot of context. I over-inform people, so they can never say, "Well, I didn't know this was coming." I put it in writing. I have what I call my 3-2-1 method. It's 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, 3 days, 2 days, 1 day before I do anything. Those communications go
oh,
out,
okay,
right?
okay, I like that.
Right. So
Yeah,
everybody hears it's coming. I will go to people's desk and say, "Hey, just making sure you saw this. Do you have any questions for me while I'm standing here?" Like back when we were in offices. And now that we're online, I'm an extrovert. And so when the pandemic hit, I was like, okay, I'm hosting a weekly meeting of just talk to Carlota about stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yes.
Um, so you have to really reach out to people. If you ever want to see pain and suffering, right? Go to a 40-year-old organization. This is one of my first VCSO clients, right? They were
Uh-huh.
in some shape, they had been around for 40 years in some shape or another. And in the last like 3 years, they had consolidated four different 20 to 40-year-old nonprofit organizations under one roof into one nonprofit. And so they were all coming at this very passionately and believing very much in what they did, but believing that they did it better than anyone else, right? So there was
Mm,
a
mhm.
culture clash within the organization before I got there. And then they were trying to roll out
Wow,
multi-factor authentication, right?
that's
Like,
always
you're
fun. That's always fun.
it was, any friction you add to somebody else's business process is immediately an obstacle for them.
Oh my,
So
and
you
you're an
have to
enemy.
get their buy-in, right?
Oh,
They
yes,
have
yes,
to
yes,
want to
yes.
do it. Yeah.
And
So
I've been down
yeah.
that path. So when you talk about that, I can relate.
Mhm,
I can hear you. I'm like, oh
mhm,
my gosh,
mhm.
you get it, you
Yeah.
get it. And that's kind of a lot of what I was feeling when I
Mhm.
heard you speaking. And I was just
Yeah,
like, man, I keep hearing
yeah.
this, this common thread, but you were speaking with it with such authority and such expertise and experience. And I was like,
Oh, thank you.
I'm hearing what you're putting down. I'm getting it. So
And
so
I say
whenever
things I say things and it always surprises me what lands, right? Like, I always say, and I've said this for years, you're gonna use more social engineering inside of an organization, getting buy-in from people than you will ever
oh
use in a
my
penetration
gosh.
test,
Isn't that
right?
funny? Isn't that funny? Like legit, you're so
Right,
right. Like one of
right.
the greatest skills I've ever learned through my years in IT has always been don't make it my idea. If I can make it their idea, I got
Right.
a much better shot at getting their buy-in,
Mhm,
getting my stakeholders on board. So
mhm,
yes, I
mhm.
learned
Yeah.
through career advancement. It's better
Mhm.
if they if they make it their idea. And I'm like, man, you were
Right.
smart for doing that. You were a genius.
Right, that's
Thank you.
brilliant, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, and
And it's
it's
like,
it's also easier for people to criticize and create. So bring them
yes,
something that's kinda half-baked, that's tototally fine, you know,
yes, yes.
because 'cause they're gonna pick it apart anyway, so,
And the
yeah,
quicker you can
bring in a
adopt that
surprise.
and just
Mhm,
involve that, you it's
mhm.
the end result will come much quicker, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
having said that, everyone I was telling Carlota that this month I was and I've been excited to share I really wanted to contribute to the Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And, one of my heart things, and I've done work in the past, is work in my own community here where I educated parents and guardians on like the dangers of the internet, how to keep their children safe. And I'm going to be talking about some of those things throughout the month, but I did not want to limit that to my guests or anything, but also if they wanted to contribute to it, they could, and everything else. And so I kind of asked Carlota this morning, what were some topics that were, like close to her right now? Maybe not so much as her heart, but what is on the top of her brain? What is, what's spicing up there, and what is she feeling? And so she gave me a topic this morning. We kind of chatted about, and I was like, I want to hear more during the show. I don't want to get the preview. I don't want to get the preview before everyone else does. But so why don't you tell us a little bit about that topic, Carlota?
Yeah, putting you in security. And this is a discussion that I have with small business owners, with artists. I am a virtual CISO. I specifically serve smaller companies. Historically, that's been in the 50 to 250 person employee range, right? But I'm trying to move even smaller because my heart is with that small mom and pop business, and they can't afford me. So I have to give them a lot of stuff. Yeah, I take the bigger contracts so I can pay for the things that I really want to do. But one of getting them to understand, because we say as security professionals, we say all kinds of things to our non-security friends, to small mom and pop businesses, to small companies that are 5-10 people, and they have no idea what they mean, right? They don't know why we're saying that. They hear it repeatedly. Hey, you need to have really good, strong, complex passwords, but we don't pause and show them why. Right. And
Yes.
so part of that bringing you into security is I have talks, and, I'm not going to go too much into it because I do want to leave us a lot of room to talk about other things, and I want to leave room for people to ask questions. But, one of the things I do is in a talk, I will go to the security.org's password checker. So if you just Google security.org password checker, you will come to a page that you can put a password in, and it will tell you, password that is not collected on the back end, by the way. That will tell you, this is a trusted source, that will tell you how long it would take a computer to crack the password, right? So it's really powerful to sit somebody down in front of that and say, put your password in here, or put your child's name, put your dog's name. When I'm doing this to a crowd of people, I'm kind of a Star Trek fan. And so I will use Data's cat spot, right? And so I will type in my cat spot, all lowercase, right? All simple case, no fancy, complex anything. And that takes literally like 2 seconds to crack, right? It takes no time for a computer to crack that. And then I say to the crowd, hey, here's what we mean when we say longer, complex passwords. We're going to start with complex. We're going to put an @ sign for the A's, and we're going to put a $sign for the S's. That's what complexity is. And then I put in a new password, I heart my, heart being the close bracket and the number 3. I heart my cat spot, using that bit of complexity. Oh, now that takes 600 years to crack. And I said, okay, let's go a little bit longer and a little bit more complex. And so my third password with that is my cat spot is the best cat ever, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, right? That takes like 60 or 600 no million years, which is like 50 zeros. It
Oh my
takes a
gosh.
long time, right? This really impresses on a non-technical user why we're asking them for this stupid, pardon my French, stupid shit, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why do they keep telling me I need long, complex passwords, right? And this also lets me say, hey, if you're using a service that does not require long, complex passwords, they are not protecting your data. That's a really easy
Mm.
way for you to tell my data is not safe with this website.
I
And
appreciate that. I
yeah,
appreciate that. So in the comments, everyone, you can see I did put in the oh, you know what? Let me scroll it on the screen real quick.
oh,
So
there you
there's
go.
the website, and if you're on YouTube, you can grab it there. The comments don't post the comments don't post up on LinkedIn, but I will make sure to share it later in the comments. But you can go to the security.org, how secure is my password, and it'll pop up right there. So it's so funny how you mentioned that, because I remember when I was younger and I would walk by the keyboards in computer shops, or the key or the not the keyboards, but the oh my gosh, typewriters. That's how long it's been. Typewriters. And I remember I always had this phrase I always wanted to spell out in there. And it was
Mhm.
always, I'm the greatest. But I would say Jaime Pina is the greatest. And because
There
I
you
just like
go.
to see it, pop up on the papers and on the screens and all that stuff. And I like how you're saying keep adding to the password.
Mhm.
And a lot of times I think I feel like, so tell me if this is what
Mhm.
people have shared with you. I feel like we think passwords have to be this very almost static type of thing, right? Like
Mhm.
for I'm just going to use this as an example. I do
Mhm.
not have any of these passwords, I guarantee you. Okay. Password
Right.
123. Like that's
Right.
a
Right.
very, I feel, static type passwords,
Mhm.
right? Or any
Mhm.
variation of that.
Mhm.
And when we try to educate people to add on this extra piece, it really
Mhm.
feels like it's a bit extra. It's extra.
Mhm. Mhm. It's
And
totally
it's
extra. Yeah.
and it's pain, right?
Mhm.
So when you have to come up against that, what is one of the best what's one of the tools in your arsenal that you use to help combat that argument for them? Other than the
Right.
amount of years, right? But because
Right.
it's feelings. I
Right.
get logic is one
Right.
thing, right? But
Right.
feelings is
Yeah.
another.
Yeah. No, that's why I say any friction you add to somebody else's process is immediately an obstacle, right?
Hmm.
Because you have made this infinitely harder for them. Even though if it's 2 clicks, it's infinitely harder because it feels emotionally feels harder to them. And so, 99% of the time I'll get the buy-in by walking them through the password checker. But there's always that super smart person who knows I have my own little algorithm for making my passwords and blah 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 blah. I'm like, that's great. If that algorithm is working and you can get a nonillion years and password checker, I'm fine with that. Like that's totally fine. Giving them, when they are like, well, I'm better than that. I don't have to do it. If they really are, I'm fine with that. If they're really doing something, I'm okay with it. If they're really not, then they're just there are times when it's just not worth the effort to fight, right?
Yeah.
And maybe
Right.
maybe if you are a security person and you're getting that pushback and you're going to get that pushback from CEOs, right? Then you have to come up with other ways of working around them. So limiting what they have access to, right? I'm not going to give CEO access to the accounting system now. You know, in a small company, that's a real problem because the CEO is used to having access to everything.
Right.
But I
Yeah,
tell them,
if you're joining us, because Carlota said her
mhm,
her focus is on those businesses with 50 to 200 employees in there. And so for the CEO,
mhm,
like you said, not having that access, it's going to be a very
mhm.
noticeable restriction for
Oh yeah.
them.
Right, right. And sometimes what I do with that is I check to see when they last logged into that accounting system or into the CRM or whatever. Like when was the last time they actually used access to that system? If it
Mhm.
was not this year, they don't have an argument. I just tell them I'm winning this argument. You're going to have to you're paying me for a reason. So it's I'm lucky as a virtual CISO. That CEO has already signed my check. He or she is paying me for a reason. So I've already got ground there. And that's not ground a security person within a small organization is going to have necessarily. So I
Mhm.
have to check my privilege a little bit, right? Because I do have more buy-in than the average security team because somebody had to write that check for me to be there rather than I'm hiring a security team because because it looks good, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So because before I take on a client, I'm very clear with my expectations of them. I am not a box checker. And if that's how you want to use me, I will refer you to someone else, or I will ask you to find an MSP or MSSP with a VCSO service because they're happy to check your boxes. I am not that person. So I get clients that have a high level of buy-in already.
Okay, that's
Um,
good to know.
Deliberate,
So
deliberate.
let's go on a little side journey for a moment here. So
Hmm.
for those of you who are watching, I didn't think. I was like, I wonder if they know what a
Oh, a
VC.
VCSO is. Yeah,
Yeah, and so maybe you can kind of tell us
that's a
what
good
that is,
question.
what that entails, and
Yeah,
maybe so that they
yeah.
can understand because you're in a position where you're influencing, this buy-in. And so
Mhm.
does that mean that everyone who gets into the IT field or the cybersecurity realm, are they going to be people who
Right,
influence, the
right.
decision makers into that? And whether they
Mhm.
are or
Mhm.
not, maybe you can still
Mhm.
just share with us what your title
Yeah.
is and how that looks like in the bigger scheme of things.
Right. That's a really good point because a lot of people inside of our industry don't know what a vCISO is. I end up doing a lot of education around that. So a company, when they are big enough, say 300 to 500 people and up, hire a chief information security officer, a CISO, or you'll hear it CISO, CISO, you'll hear it all different kinds of ways.
Right.
Um, they will hire a chief information security officer to set their security strategy, build their security team, select their technology, and drive all of that. Companies need that strategy long before they're ready to hire a full-time CISO. So they go to virtual or fractional CISOs. A virtual CISO is maybe you get 3 to 5 hours of my time a week or every other week. A fractional CISO is sometimes that line is blurred. Sometimes it's the same thing. Some people tend to think of that fractional CISO as I actually dedicate an entire day or 2 mornings a week that are exclusively yours. Um, they're kind of bleeding together, virtual or fractional CISO. So you'll see that as a vCISO or as an FCISO. I started
I
my company, Pocket CISO. Go ahead.
uh-huh. No, I was gonna say I was sitting here this whole morning thinking I knew what a VCSO was. And I am so glad you just educated me. If any of you out there are like me right now and just kind of like, I thought it meant virtual CISO, which it sounds like it does, but I thought that just meant you worked away from the office,
Yeah, I'm permanently
Carlota.
remote. No, that's a really good point, right?
Yeah.
You can't hire me unless I'm not allowed to come into the
Uh,
office.
I feel like such a silly man right now. Like, oh my God. The way you describe it, it actually makes better sense
Oh.
now that I've put that in the framework of everything I've heard
Mhm, mhm.
this past year. And I am just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, and you're gonna hear virtual CEO. If you listen
Uh-huh.
to NPR in the Bay
Yes.
Area in California, there's a company that advertises virtual CFO. These are or you'll hear the CISO as a service or CFO as a
Oh
service,
my
right? And
gosh.
we're deliberately serving multiple smaller organizations at once. So it's more of a consulting CISO rather than a
Yes.
full-time, I'm dedicated to you 24 hours a day CISO. Um, and there are a lot of benefits to that, right?
Yes.
Because you are outside that organization and because you do have a lot more visibility across different industries or across different organizations, you can bring a lot of value to a smaller organization. Um, and the CISO as a service, especially. I mean, the independent, I'm a solo practitioner at the moment, but I
Uh-huh.
have worked, mid pandemic, I got so lonely. I shut down my own
Oh.
consulting service. I joined a great company out of Boston called Fractional CISO run by Rob Black. And I had an amazing time learning from him. But, my philosophy was a little bit different. And Rob was very invested in having the office in Boston and the senior leadership coming in once a month. And I
Mhm.
fundamentally disagree with that, right? I just don't believe you have to have an office. And I was burnt out after, yeah, right, exactly. And
It's
none of my
hard when you
clients
work in the
were
tech field and you're trying to tell me we need to be in I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. But
Yeah,
I think very highly of that company, and I absolutely do
sure.
refer people back to Rob and the team there, and I really value the time that I spent there. But I did leave, and not because of anything wrong that they did, but
Mhm.
because philosophically this is not where I was supposed to be. So I also kind of want to normalize leaving really great people behind when it's still
Yes.
not the right fit for you, right?
Right. Right.
Hmm.
Yes. I think
Yeah.
that's totally okay. Like I tell
Yeah.
people, like again, another side road over here we're going through. I agree with you. Like, but I also feel
Mhm.
like I don't want. I always encourage people. I'm like, don't be so
Mhm.
loyal. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with
Yeah.
loyalty,
Yeah.
right? Like, but let's make no
Right.
mistake that we are in mutually beneficial relationships. We
Mhm.
give a
Mhm.
service
Yeah.
that we are in turn paid
Yeah.
for. And that's
Yeah.
okay. There should be nothing.
Yeah.
The whole
Yeah.
concept of, and I really felt bad when the last tech layoffs happened, and I remember seeing
Mhm.
everyone's feed in LinkedIn, and they were just like,
Mhm.
I had a dream of
Mhm.
working for this company and that company, and I've been here for a year, and I'm being let go now, and I can't believe that, and I don't even know what to do. And I'm like, you don't know what to do? Like,
That's
again,
because you made that company a part of who you are, and that's
yes,
not
it's
ever
not
gonna be good for you.
safe. And
Yeah.
as great as companies can be, it's not knocking them down. I
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to work for some great companies out there. There
Mhm,
are some companies
mhm,
I would love to go work for, but
mhm,
it is okay, kind of like how you said, it's okay to leave these great
mhm,
places
mhm.
because it no longer becomes
Yeah,
mutually beneficial. It's
yeah.
okay. It's
Yeah,
okay.
and there's also the certain amount of my background specifically is in large scale content management, help centers, knowledge bases. So if you've ever gone to support.netgear.com and solved a problem with an article there, I designed, architected, and drove the development of the original knowledge base for them. If you've ever been to help.netflix.com and put in an error code from Netflix and gotten a fix-it article, I designed and developed and drove designed, architected, and drove the development of that platform. That is my jam, is taking a large amount of data and distilling it down, and making useful self-service articles, because it's a big, big, big ROI for the company. They save a lot of money, but it's
Right.
an infinitely better experience for the customer. Most of your customers really don't want to call you and ask you a question, right?
They
Most of us
don't.
don't want to pick up the phone, right?
Right. And we're getting into this age where, especially, the mobile development side of that, right?
Mhm,
So scaling it
mhm,
down further so that it's in the palm of our hand
mhm,
readily and easily.
mhm,
People are much more wanting to see if they can find that answer in their hand pretty quick. They don't want to,
mhm.
and it's at night, right? So you're chilling
Right.
out at home and you're like, oh man, what is going on here? So you can look it up and figure it out real quick, and takes you like 2 or 3 minutes, right?
Yeah,
Versus
yeah,
having to get on the phone and
yeah,
dealing with what you got to deal with on that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yeah,
uh,
but, coming back to that, though, is that I had this set of skills that I come to vCISO work, cybersecurity work with. I actually ended up as the community manager. I accidentally took over the communities at FireEye. When I was there, FireEye was a very hot, back in the day, cybersecurity product vendor. They purchased Mandiant. Eventually, Mandiant actually became the main company and spun them off, and they are now Trellix, and nobody knows who they are or what they do anymore. So
they threw a swap card out there, or reverse
right.
card.
Yeah, that was a really great sleight of hand on Kevin Mandia's part. But I took over the communities because I was actually the platform admin, but the
Uh-huh.
person they had hired to run the communities, the marketing guy, was neither technical nor interested in security, and he couldn't answer some of the questions. And he'd kind of alienated the security, the support team, and they wouldn't talk to him anymore. And so I would get all these questions, and I eventually was just like, "What are they talking about in our communities?" And I got out there and I started answering questions, right? And I started doing the knowledge strategy and incorporating that into community strategy. And so that's where I'm coming from, is I can solve a problem once, and I can solve it for thousands of people if I do it right. Right.
Mm.
And I bring that with me to the vCISO work. And that was something that I wanted to do. I pitched that to Rob, and when he hired me, I was like, I don't know, Rob, the pay is kind of low, right? I was really blunt about
We
it,
add
and
another
I
zero
like
over there. I'm
right? Like, I I was interviewing, but, I chose that job for a couple of reasons. One, I really liked Rob and felt like I could learn a lot from him. Number two, Rob was very upfront. We're a small company. We can't pay as much as the big guys, but you are getting paid as much as the male VC6,
Oh
right? And I
wow.
just felt like that was very important. That was a really important thing to hear.
Yeah.
Um, but as time went on, I wanted to build a community product with Fractional, and Rob liked that idea eventually. He didn't like it at first, but there got to be a point where it's like, okay, Carlota, I'm gonna let you build this. I'm like, great. Where's my money? Where's my
Yeah.
equity? And it was a business decision for Rob. He's like, I can't do that, and then it became a personal decision for me. Am I willing to? Um, am I willing to give up this piece and be paid the same as the male VC says, when I'm fundamentally bringing a very different set of skills to it? And so it was a personal decision for me. It was a hard decision to make because I loved the company. But at the end of the day, I could do it myself,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and that's a decision we're all going to have to face at some point with a company, is that you do bring something of value there. Don't let them take that and make it a part of theirs without giving you some kind of equity.
I like how you say that. I like how you
Mhm.
put that. That's a good point. That's a great point. Would you say that does the VISO carry the same amount of power as the CISO? Because they don't have a CISO in their organization, right?
Right, right. It depends on the organization. I'm going to say it that way.
Okay. Okay.
Let me think this one through. Um, Again, I think it depends on who's bringing it in, who's bringing in the VC. So you are fundamentally an influencer. I think we're actually better. I
Mm.
hate to say it. I think we're actually better than a full-time CISO. I will caveat that. I will caveat that by saying I have never been a full-time CISO. So
Oh,
understand that I have only ever been a consulting CISO, a
yeah.
virtual CISO,
If you're a
right?
CISO watching this and you just got triggered, please just
Oh yes, oh
not.
yes. If you're a CISO, it's just, and let's be honest, most CISOs aren't going to come listen to VCISO because they think they know it all already. I've had some interesting statements from CISOs on what they thought of VCISO work, which, a little bit of gatekeeping there, fellas.
Yeah.
But also a fellow VCISO of mine was like, they never say that to me, Carlota. And I have to wonder if it's because you're a brown woman. They feel like they can say that,
Oh, you
right?
know,
I literally had a
stats show that it is very, what happens to people, brown and black people doesn't normally happen to not. So,
yeah, yeah.
but
So I
do
appreciate
you,
my white allies who are like, I never deal with that. You should
yeah.
not have to deal with that. You send them to me next time, right? Or
Aw.
I hope I see it because I will step in. But I
I
literally
think it's
had,
great to have allies like
and
that.
it's really
I've had
important.
it where it's not,
Mhm,
and it has
mhm.
been hugely traumatic,
It
hugely
is.
traumatic.
It
It's like,
is.
where am I
Yeah.
working in?
Yeah.
What's, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I want to comment on
Mm,
one more thing for the VISO, and then we can slide back into the main line. But I have to tell you,
mm,
I don't know what the feeling is. Pride, soft-heartedness, whatever you want to say. But when I hear
mhm,
you say like you're looking at providing the services for your small businesses, right? Like you
mhm,
target, that sounds so horrible. Say you target, you make yourself more available to the 50 to
mhm,
200 size companies.
mhm,
Like,
mhm,
gosh, I can't
mhm,
tell you how impactful that is for
mhm.
someone like
Oh
me.
yeah.
Where,
Oh yeah.
and for those of you listening, I've shared a couple times in the past. I shared with Carlota this morning when, I've had experiences where I've seen mom and pop shops close down.
Yeah.
And this was in the early days of when PCI first was out there, version one, to be honest with you, right? And it was difficult. A lot of places were getting breached, and so the security standards got created and put out there, and the fines were steep for those mom and pop places. It was
Mm-hmm.
painful. I had seen restaurants specifically because that's where my background was in the hospitality industry, right? I had seen mom and pop places that had been open for 80 years, 80 plus years. And this was in the 2000s, early 2000s. And they can get shut down because they just couldn't afford the fines with the breaches that happened. And
Mm-hmm.
right
Mm-hmm.
now in 2023, it's easy to say, well, they got breached. They could, desert. And it's like, no, you don't understand what it was like back in 2000 when it was like, what's happening? How did that
Mm-hmm.
happen? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it was not. And so the fines were just closing mom and pop places down. We didn't have cybersecurity
Mm-hmm.
insurance for
Yeah.
businesses to
Yeah.
have. And
Yeah.
so when I
Yeah. And
hear
a
you
small
talking about
mom and
that,
pop place probably couldn't afford it even if they did.
yeah. And if they
Yeah.
did, after the premiums would go up for the first, whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hear you talking about making your
Yeah.
services available to those mom and pop, or I'm sorry, not mom and pop, to the small business sector,
Right. Right.
it's like, man, I
Right.
appreciate hearing that so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Because I
Thank
think
you.
a lot of
I love
times, a
it.
lot of our
I
work,
love it.
yeah, a lot of the work seems like it's generated
Mm-hmm.
for the big company, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you have aspirations to go work for the big guys, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm just saying
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the attention to the small businesses, Carlota, that you're providing to there. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank
You
you. I
bet. You bet.
appreciate that.
So
Yeah, and for the really small, for those mom and pop places, as much as I can give to them for free, I can because it's all preventive. Once something has happened to them,
mhm.
none of us can help them. right? There's
Right.
nothing, if your Instagram account gets taken over, there is nothing I can do once that's happened. I can help you prevent it, but I can't help you resolve it,
Yeah,
right? So that's very painful for me.
it is.
Um,
Hey,
yeah,
Aaron, welcome.
so yeah, yeah. Hi, Aaron. So
So hopping back in
good.
the main, getting back to the main road. We
All
were
right,
over
yeah,
there for a while. Thank you. But so we
sure.
were talking about the past. We're talking about
Mhm,
passwords. How
mhm,
I appreciate earlier in our conversation when I was talking, not now, but earlier, I had said something that you corrected me on, and it was impacting. So I had said, yeah, I said something about passwords. I was like, it's so basic, but it's so important too. And then you
mhm,
said,
mhm.
what did you say? Um, it's not
Don't
basic.
devalue it by calling it basic. It's foundational.
There you
It's
go.
fun. Yeah.
It's don't
Yeah, because
devalue it.
basic
It's
has a very
foundational.
negative connotation, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
easy to
So we
look at
call it
this as, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
it
Sorry.
yeah, we call it the basics, but it's really not.
Hmm.
It's the foundation. And who builds the foundation of your house? Somebody with a clue. Are you going to build the foundation for your house? Seems like a bad idea if you're not, somebody who does foundations for houses, right? So,
So well
calling it
said.
basic, brushing your teeth is basic. And we like to compare passwords to hygiene, good security hygiene,
Yeah.
but it's really not,
Weird.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm,
I like that. And
mhm,
because I think when I'm thinking about this month, right? Again, just going back to the whole participating here and running to help folks, like this is a lesson that can be taken across the board. It is not meant only for one specific set of people in a
mhm,
specific field, right? I think we're in
mhm.
an age right now where everyone participates in some sort of security. That
Right.
level of security can be, and I'm not going
Yeah.
to say basic, but it can be as simple slash easy.
Mhm,
What am I trying to say? Like it can be made so that it's easy for malicious individuals and groups to
mhm,
do damage, or you can make it as complex as to hinder that for a long
mhm.
time, right?
Mhm, mhm, mhm. It's kind of like the way that, the club for cars, right? The thing that you put in your steering wheel. It's really not gonna deter a determined thief. You can pretty easily overcome a club for cars.
Yeah.
But if it's somebody looking for a quick hit, they're gonna go to the next car. It's the same with locks on your doors. If somebody really wants to get into your house, your lock isn't gonna to prevent that really. But
Oh,
if it's somebody who just wants a quick hit, and they're twisting your doorknob, your house is now a little bit harder than the house next door who leaves their doors unlocked, right?
the connection with that though is so like, but you think about it in your homes,
Mhm,
you may not get into my home, but you go to my neighbor, you might get into their home, but you're only getting into their home. When we
mhm,
talk about cybersecurity, we're talking
mhm.
about a linked network a lot of times, right? Like even in
You're
our
getting into the
homes,
whole neighborhood.
you can get into
Yeah.
the whole neighborhood.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah,
Oh, that is
yeah,
deep.
yeah, right? And,
Yes.
cameras don't necessarily they don't deter crime because
Mm.
a criminal's gonna crime, right? Um,
Yes.
Putin's gonna Putin, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
Russia's gonna
Yes.
Russia. I think that was the best description that I heard from somebody when the unfortunate Ukraine war started. I was working with a team in the country of Georgia, not the state of Georgia, the country of
Uh-huh.
Georgia. And I said, "This is kind of in in your backyard. I want to give you, time to step back from this project if you need." And he goes, Russia's gonna Russia. Let's go. Like I can't stop for this.
Yeah.
And I was like, great attitude, right? But yeah, criminals don't stop necessarily because there's a camera. Um, maybe some of them do. Maybe
Mhm.
they just work a little harder to figure out how to do the crime without being on camera, right?
Right,
And
right.
as a potential victim, what the camera potentially gives you is a doc. Again, it doesn't necessarily prevent the crime, but it gives you documentation that will help you secure the criminal later, right?
Yes.
So that's the
Yeah, when you
thing that.
put it like that, it's like it makes sense, but hearing it like
Mhm.
that, it's really just kind of
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
mind twister in a way. It's like, I get
Yeah.
that, and I understand that
Yeah.
what you're saying. I get it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
like, it's unfortunate. Somebody may break into my house and harm me, and I can't necessarily prevent that, but with a good security system, maybe I can, and maybe I can make it harder enough for them to break in that they pass my house on. But if that fails and they do succeed in hurting me, I want that, whether I live through that experience or not, I want that criminal to be caught. So I
yeah,
want those cameras there. Yeah. And that's a reality that a lot of people have to live with in, crime-ridden areas, single women. I'm a single woman who travels alone a lot. I am very sensitive to crime. But
yeah,
yeah, I'm very much about my risk management. But I'm not going to stop traveling because of it.
yeah. I think about,
Yeah.
I hear that, and I'm like, I have 2
Mhm.
daughters,
Mhm.
and it takes
Mhm.
enough
Mhm.
to secure my children's safety, digital
Mhm.
safety in this world
Yeah.
and right now. And
Yeah.
I feel like I have some level of expertise in this field, right? I know how to lock
Mhm.
down the firewall or the router in the house. I know how to put the right
Mhm.
software on my kids' phones and my
Mhm.
phones. I know how to keep us connected and in touch with each other. But even through all that, there's still stuff that slips through the crack. It's like you say, it's like if there's
Mhm.
someone who wants to, if there's someone who's going to be malicious,
Mhm.
they're going to be malicious
Mhm.
somewhere, somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we have to we live with that as security people. We live with that as human beings, right? That's
Mhm.
w we just have to keep that in mind as we go forward, that reality the reality of what security really is,
Yeah.
right? And the reality of risk management. Because let's be very clear, cybersecurity is risk management. If you look at the NIST cybersecurity framework, as I showed you with the talk at Stronger, right? Um, if you look at that, it's a very simple enterprise risk management framework. It's
Mhm.
got all of those same elements. And so we think of, and I think historically, cybersecurity has been very, because it's very technology heavy, it's
Mhm.
always been much like, and because it grows out of IT, like in the amount of time that, in the era that you and I started in IT and security were the same thing. And
Yes.
even when I was at Netgear in 2010, we did not have a separate security team. Each of the IT people just had security as a part of their role.
Right.
And has security, but here's the problem: when it's everyone's responsibility, nobody's accountable,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that's why security really started getting pulled out. And if you think about the history of security, it's you really get it from the military, and then the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000s, who can afford to poach people out of the military and build security teams. So security has historically been this very involved technical technology driven industry,
Right.
only because of who could afford it and not because of the reality of what security
The
needs to
danger
be.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? You know, the danger was already there. It was just that the government was, and Fortune 500 were the higher value targets. So that's where the criminals originally focused all their effort. And has technology has enabled so many of us to become, you know, have our own websites, have our own presence on the internet, have our own information connected in Google Drive and Microsoft Teams, has grown, has cloud just enabled everyone to become a startup, right? Now criminals have much bigger playing field and they've responded much more quickly to it than the defenders have.
Wow.
Criminals have organized call centers, right? There have been, I've seen several good talks, which I unfortunately can't think of any of the speakers at the top off the top of my head, that had done a lot of research and threat intel research into the direct tie between cybersecurity ransomware and gangs that do human and drug trafficking. Right. So if you're paying that $300 gift card or that
Ooh.
$500 Bitcoin ransomware, that money somewhere in that chain is supporting child pornography, human trafficking and drug trafficking.
That's so
So,
terrible. You don't
right?
really connect that a lot of times, right? And it's hard for people in any realm when they see or hear any of these cybersecurity attacks, right? Any of these cyber attacks that
Mhm,
happen, because when it's a digital situation, it's hard to really connect that emotion and that feeling with it. You know that you don't have access to your data, and that's super frustrating, right? And if someone's like, yeah, like I said, pay a $300 gift card or anything like that, and you're kind of like, whatever it takes to just get it back like there. And I get that in the long term, like it's not.
Yeah, $300 for an American. And even if we're lower income, it's not it's not necessarily a life-changing loss. I mean, it can be for some folks.
It can
but
be.
Yeah, it can be, but it's not necessarily in the United States a catastrophic event to lose $300.
Right.
So,
Right.
and so a small business that gets hit with ransomware, and it's like, oh, if I just give them $500, I can have my Instagram account back. Well, number one, only 50-50 chance that you're going to get your account back. Number two, that $500 somewhere, some portion of it is supporting some really bad stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you willing to do that? And some people, the morality of it is that stuff happens whether I paid this $500 or not. And I
have you
just need a
seen
chance
any of that like happen in the? Would you say that in your time? I feel like you've been in both the small business world and in the, like you said, Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 world kind of situation. Have you seen the impact from that, like from ransomware on both sides? Is it pretty equal? Is it pretty like no one's really safe from it?
No, it's not equal in any way. and it's it's devastating in different ways. Adrian Snabria, who's an amazing CISO out of, I want to say Tennessee, Kentucky. I don't remember. Adrian, I'm sorry, wherever you are, you're great. Adrian Sanabria keeps a running tally of businesses that have been shut down by ransomware or malware attacks.
Really?
Yeah, small to mid-sized businesses. So I hear stories from incident responders all the time where there was a huge, like, number one concrete seller or creator, manufacturer, that's the word, the number one concrete manufacturer for many years in Texas, got hit by a malware attack, and it dragged on for so long, the board decided it was cheaper to disband the company and reform it and start over, or not reform it, right? Just disband the company because it costs too much to address the malware attack. And that's a company that had been around for decades. And if you look at Adrian's list, I'll see if I can find it so that we can share the link. I think he basically links to news articles and that sort of thing, so that you can go and read what that effect is on this. Because there are articles out there, we don't necessarily see them because maybe they're a regional article or a local article because they're not making the big splash. Does America care when a 200-person company folds? Not really.
When you read about it in the news, it's easy to stay detached from it, without realizing that there's real people, livelihoods, families associated with something like that. And that's how I feel every time I see stuff like that. I'm always thinking, geez, man, like that. It's not just this breach or this hack or something else like that, right? It's like the impact to real people is there.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. It's so terrible.
Yeah, it is. And it's, it's older Americans, and my aunt has a friend in Australia. My aunt lives in Australia, who in her 60s, late 60s, got scammed out of $750,000, right? 758,000 Australian, which is like 500,000 American, still a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And this is one person, and that was a social engineering scam, right? Oh, if you invest 10,000 with us, we'll do this. And oh, well, if you invest another 10,000, right? And they basically kind of used her as an ATM for a year before anyone figured it out.
You said Adrian Wright, correct?
Adrian Sanabria, Sanabria.
Spell it again.
Sanabria, Sanabria.
Trying to find that link real quick. Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee.
Hines Research.
Seeing if I can find it as well. I've got it. Oh, I've got it linked somewhere, I'm sure. But yeah, not to derail us too
Sorry,
much,
yeah.
but you know, there's a lot that goes on that people just we've become we've become a nerd to it, right? Our sensitivity to the thing, we're just so bombarded by it day after day after day after day. Oh, you know, somebody got a malware attack. Oh well, sucks to be them.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like, yeah.
That's
Mm,
painful. That's sad. Let me
mhm,
ask you, because I know there's a question that I get a lot of times from people who I speak to
mhm,
over the weeks, months, years, and all this stuff. And
mhm,
I'm curious because I know that this question usually comes up on a lot of people's minds. And it's like,
mhm,
uh, do you have any advice for folks that would want to venture into either the cybersecurity realm as large as it is, and
mhm.
or specifically in a role that's like yours?
Oh, wow. 20 years of experience in IT and an ability to talk to people without talking down to them, you'll make a great VCSO or CISO, right? It's that little thing of being able to talk to people without talking down to them, right?
You know,
That's
I feel like
uh,
that is the goal. Like over the years, I've been in a position to influence hiring of people, and I've always told myself, I'm
mhm,
like, you know, I would take someone who can speak to people great
mhm,
and had zero IT skills whatsoever, because I can teach the
mhm,
IT skills,
mhm,
but on the other side, someone who has the IT skills but has those poor soft skills and people skills, it's like
mhm,
I don't want to take a chance on that as much, because
mhm,
it's I have found it difficult to train soft skills into people. Right? It's not easy to tell people to get out of your shell, to go and engage, and to give
mhm,
them,
mhm.
deliver something to your hearer that they feel confident about, and not just confident about, but respected when you speak to them. Right? They feel
Yeah,
respected when you talk to them. And
right,
people are like, "I'm
right.
not trying to be disrespectful." I'm like, "No, you're not. You're right. You're right."
You're not
But
trying to,
yeah.
right,
But on the other hand, you're not trying
but you
to.
are. Right,
Yeah.
well, and that's I like to tell people, I understand that is not your intent. You need to understand that is your result,
Yes. I like that. Ooh,
right?
I like that.
And yeah, and I'm back. I catch myself doing it. It's something that you have to constantly practice. And when I was young in my 20s, I had a mentor tell me, "You lack compassion for people, including yourself. And that is not going to serve you well in IT, and it is not going to serve you well in life."
Mm.
Right, and I took that very seriously, and it's like, how do you learn empathy, and how do you learn compassion? And, I told that story once, and a friend of mine was like, "Oh, but Carlota, you're one of the most compassionate people I know," and I'm like, "Yeah, after 30 years of practice, I better be," but right?
I
But
appreciate
it
that
is.
practice. I appreciate it,
You
Carlota.
have
Okay.
to practice. You have to. You
Yeah.
have to. I read a lot of biographies of people who suffered greatly, you know, of people from the Holocaust, of people from the Deep South, right? I read a lot of things to try to learn to put myself into other people's shoes.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of work to learn
Yeah. It
emotional
does.
intelligence, right?
And that's what
But
I was
it's
just about to touch on. I was like, I've had to, for me, it's been a lot of reading and understanding
Mhm.
emotional intelligence. I
Yeah.
very strongly feel,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, the damage from that can usually be is like what I feel is what matters most above anything else or anyone
Mhm.
else.
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and that people can't read my minds, and I can't,
Mhm.
I don't impart my feelings onto people, and so it
Mhm.
takes a very deliberate
Mhm.
communicating what's going on and separating the feeling from the fact,
Yeah.
you know but
Yeah,
also
and I
being able
wasn't
to
great at that
deliver
for
that.
years. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead,
And
I'm sorry.
no, that's what I
Chopped
was like,
out a little
just
bit
being
there.
able to deliver that fact well enough so it's not taken, how did you say a
Mhm.
second ago, that the result wasn't without
Mhm.
feeling.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you. It takes a lot of practice, and, I uh, I'm neurodivergent, and I'm somewhere on the spectrum, and I didn't discover this until last year. And all of my friends are either on the spectrum or have children very on the spectrum. And they were all like, "You didn't know that?" Like, we all knew that, right?
Like,
You
thanks
get
for
to an
telling
age
me,
where they,
everyone.
right? 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 Yeah, somebody could have told me, that would have been great. I just thought I was half Filipino. Right? So, yeah. I, I'm I'm a little brown kid growing up in the black and white world of Montgomery, Alabama. I know I'm wired differently. I thought it was cultural. No, it's I'm wired differently, right?
Yeah.
And we have higher expectations of women to conform, and we have higher expectations of immigrants and immigrant children to try to conform. So
Mhm.
I developed some really amazing coping skills, and that lack of compassion, I think, really was very much from being on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
Yeah, I think
so
there's a
I'm
lot
very
of people that are I don't know what feeling to put in. Fill in the adjective for me, but that adjective
right.
that they're
Hmm.
feeling that, hearing you say that, because I think a
Hmm.
lot. I know in the circles that I've been in, I have met people who've confided that they have they're on the spectrum on varying degrees, right?
Hmm.
And some who've shared that, it's hard for me to study some of this stuff um, in the cybersecurity. There's just a lot,
There's
they're
a lot.
like, it's
There's a lot.
I learn in a very specific way, and they're like, but everything
Hmm.
I take in is in a different way, and I
Hmm.
can't ask for this specialty to be taught these things, and it's
Hmm.
hard. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
I don't know if I can relate to you or not, and I'm not going to
Hmm.
try to. I'm like, but you have my sympathy at first, and
Hmm.
if there's something I can do to help, I try
Right.
to.
Right.
But I will say my teaching style is also a
Hmm.
certain way, and sometimes that doesn't mesh well with
Hmm.
people who are neurodivergent.
Right.
Not
Well,
all
and
of
I think that's why I share so much. I share so much content is because I know how hard it was for me to learn. So if I can make this accessible to as many people as possible, it's the campfire rule. I leave the world a little tiny bit better than I got into it, right?
yes,
And I have often been told that my ability to take in a large amount of information and like with the security health model that I created, really make it a very succinct, compact, concise model that applies to all of these different things. There are a lot of people who just can't do that. And I look
hmm
at I didn't know that. So for years I was like, "Oh, I just did this." Right? You're like, "How did you do that?" I'm like, "I don't know. There's all this data and I put it in here and it all works." Right? Um, I thought everyone could do that because that's how my brain works. And
yeah,
but just like, people say, "Oh, visualize yourself on the beach. Hear the sound of the waves." Here, I was like, "Who can do that?" And it turns out a lot of people can do that. I can't do that, but like
wow,
99% of the population
yeah,
can, right? So, there is a certain it's called aphantasia, aphantasia, aphantasia. Um, and it's often called a lack of imagination, and that's not quite correct. It's a lack of an ability to visualize on command, and it's also a spectrum thing. It's a
yeah,
neurodivergence thing. You can be aphantasic, you can be hypersphantasia. People who are very lucid have very vivid daydreams, for example. I have a friend like that. Like, if a thought pops into her head, yeah, it it's very vivid for her. And if you tell me to imagine an apple, I can't. I can't do it. I have to think. I've taught myself, or I've naturally kind of, my brain has made this adaptation. I think about what an apple tastes like and what it smells like. And kind of pull back from that memory to be able to see an apple. And even then, it's not like a 3D version of an apple.
hmm
Um, so yeah, I've had some really interesting conversations with people who visualize differently. You
yeah,
know, I dream in text sometimes, like more, not that I don't have normal dreams with visuals, but a lot of my dreams, probably more than half that I remember at least, are text based. I am reading text on a page, or I am reading a screen, or it is pitch
fascinating.
black
I've
and there's
never heard that
dialogue.
before. I've never
Yeah,
thought about that, like
yeah,
how
yeah,
that's a thing. That
yeah,
is wild.
yeah. My
So
brain just turns off the visuals.
it doesn't fall on me. It doesn't fall on me that
Mm,
a lot of this topic that we're talking about right now, like, these are neat little tools or more
mhm,
arsenal to have
Mhm.
going back to
Right.
our original
Right.
topic, right? Like, because
Right.
people
Right.
are people and they're all over the
Right.
place. And so
Right.
you can help with that whole buy-in
Mhm.
and getting your stakeholders to
Mhm.
commit, knowing some of
Mhm.
these things, right? Like, this helps you. It's not
Mhm.
like every conversation needs to be tailored with
Right.
this in mind, but
Right.
sometimes we see and hear things and people in our roundabout, and we can be like, oh,
Mhm.
I wonder if they learn better like this or they understand better this. And so that can
Mhm.
help you communicate using an alternate method that the normal people
Right.
or not neurodivergent people understand in. Huh.
Yes. Yeah.
I like that.
So yeah, if you talk to some of the hardcore security folks,
Uh-huh.
like 90% of them seem to be somewhere on some spectrum. They are neurodivergent in some way. They're ADHD, ADD, they're OCD, they're, on the autism spectrum. They are somewhere. Their brain is wired fundamentally differently than the people we serve, right? That's why
Right.
we ended up in IT and security. So use it to your advantage. Figure out how to make that an advantage for you. And that whole piece of trying to learn compassion and empathy, I realized that a really great way for me to do it was to just ask people about themselves and listen,
Mm.
right? And so much of my job is shutting up and listening. And it's much more easy to be empathetic if you can turn off your need to fix everything and just hear it, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree with you completely on that. Like, and I
Mhm,
think that goes to the buy-in, like we were saying earlier, like when you can make
mhm,
it their idea and they're quick
mhm,
to adopt
mhm,
it because they think they are
mhm,
the ones, they
mhm,
had
mhm,
this grand idea. I think it
mhm,
goes to that. I think it goes to
mhm.
being silent,
Yeah,
listening to them,
yeah,
asking
yeah,
questions.
yeah.
If they are picking up on stuff, they're going to answer it the way that you were going to tell them. And
Mhm,
then when they answer it, they feel
mhm,
like it's their idea, feel like it's from their
mhm.
direction. That's how
Right,
you reverse the script on
right.
them. You ask them
And
the
even if
questions.
you can't get them, even if it's clearly not their idea, like rolling out multi-factor authentication is clearly not their idea, right?
Yeah.
You still need to give them the context where they feel like your success is critical to their success.
Yes.
So a lot of times I use the analogy of security is not a Carlota problem, right? Security is a relay race. And Jaime, as an IT person, has the baton first and he sets up the systems and then he hands the baton to you when he gives you access, and then you hand the baton to me to train you and make you aware of what the issues are, and you make me aware when there's an issue, and then I take that and I give it to the board, right, or to the C suite. That we're all touching this baton. We all have to carry the baton for a little while,
Right. Yes.
and that you can see people starting to go, "Okay, I understand why you're here now." Right? Like, this is I don't solve the problem. We solve the problem. They are not
Yes.
gonna care about my success as the security person until I am invested in their success in whatever they're doing. Because the company didn't hire them to be secure at what they do. The company hired them to handle the accounts or to sell the product or to develop the product or whatever, and security is just another thing they have to do while they're doing their regular job.
Yeah. So a
Mhm,
lot of people in my who follow on LinkedIn, a lot of them
mhm,
come from the PCI realm or they're
mhm,
learning PCI. And so I
mhm,
know a lot of
mhm,
you out there, you're watching this, and this information, like when I hear it, it helps me realize like we I don't know how many, I don't know where in the program of your learning you're at, but there's going to be a day when we have to put this into practice.
mhm,
That's going to call for this
mhm,
buy-in, right? We're going to have to not only going to
mhm,
have to know what we know in our
mhm,
cybersecurity specialty,
mhm,
but we're going to
mhm,
need to communicate that to others who
mhm.
don't know as much about it as us,
Right,
or maybe knows a lot more than us,
right.
right?
Yeah,
But there
yeah.
is going to be a level that we are going to have to communicate. All people in any of the
Mhm,
fields, but I'm saying the PCI people right now because that's usually who
mhm,
ends up coming in here
mhm,
watching this.
mhm,
Carlota. Um,
mhm,
you taking this lesson tonight and applying it in the way
mhm,
so that it helps you understand how to speak.
mhm,
That's the portion here. I really like the practicals in here, Carlota, where you're talking about being silent, listening,
Yeah,
asking
yeah,
questions.
yes, yes. And don't ask leading questions, right? One of the most valuable things for me, when I sit down with someone, I say, okay, tell me about your typical week. And you come in or you fire up your computer on Monday morning, you check your email, you log into Slack or Teams or whatever. Generic stuff happens. What do you do past that generic stuff? And letting them roll with that. And once they
Hmm.
tell me about their typical week, and it's like, oh, what software are you using to do that? What tools are you using to do that? Who do you talk to get that done? Now I have a better understanding of who they work with. A lot of shadow IT this way. I can find pretty much everything IT has never heard of this way. Um, uh, Once they get through their typical week, okay, tell me about a bad week. Tell me about
Yes.
your most painful week in the last 3 months, right?
I
What
so
happened there?
appreciate you saying this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
When I
yeah.
and I tell folks, so whenever I go in interviews in the past, I've
Mhm,
always been like, it's always good to ask questions, right? At the end of the
mhm,
interview. If you are someone who has not interviewed very much and you're listening to
mhm.
this, it is always a good thing to ask questions at the end of the interview.
Right,
It
right.
can mean the difference between getting the job or
Yeah,
not. It really
yeah,
could. Okay.
absolutely, absolutely,
Um, when you one
absolutely.
two of those questions I ask are variations of what you
Right,
just said, Carlota. It's
right,
I usually tell them,
right.
I'm like, tell me what a typical day is like for this position, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm,
usually they can answer that, or
mhm,
the outliers are going to be people who say, oh, there's no such thing as a typical day in this job and stuff. And I'm like,
mhm,
great. Then tell me what the last like all hands on deck scenario, what did
mhm,
that look like, and what were the
mhm,
expectations for the person in this
mhm.
role? That
Right.
gives me
Yeah,
us that
yeah,
insight into
yeah.
how the business is working, no matter the size, right? Because if you're in a department with a giant Fortune 50 company, or you're the new, I won't say VCISO, but
New
the new,
CISO maybe.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah, then
security, the
you
new head of security, whatever.
yeah,
Yeah,
then it starts that conversation.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that interview, like you were
yeah,
talking about, girl, that gets you
yeah,
that it
yeah,
starts the conversation. There,
yeah,
any amount that they talk and you can listen, it gets you an
right,
opportunity, not just having an ally for you, but it
right,
gets you insight into what's going on in the business and how
right.
to start
Yeah,
addressing things.
yeah.
I, I
There's
love
that's
that.
let's touch on that. There's some really great things that you need to know about interviewing. Of course, you are interviewing them just as much as they are interviewing you, and you want to make sure that you are going to be the right fit. That your communication style is going to help there. I have taken a lot of jobs because I like solving problems. I like a good shit show, and I love to take a job where anything I do is going to be an improvement.
Okay.
Right? I love those
Yes.
jobs. They are
Yes.
hard
They
and the
are.
cultures are usually toxic,
Uh,
and if I know that going in, I know how to deal with it. But, there are a couple of things that you wanna ask of a hiring manager
okay.
and how what you look for in the answer changes as you advance in your career. One of the I think a really key critical thing is, um, what how would you define success for this role in the first 90 days and in the first year? And when you're early in your career, you're going to want a little more structure. You're going to want a manager to be able to say, I expect you in the first 90 days to do ABC. And I want by the end of the year and the next year for you to do XYZ. Right. And then that's great. As you become more advanced, and if you go into a leadership type of position, you know, what you expect to start hearing, especially for someone like myself who wants to really own what I do, is I don't know what success looks like in the first 90 days. I expect you after 30 days to be able to define that with me, and we'll come to an agreement on it. That's what I want to hear now that I'm later in my career, right?
Mm,
If
mhm.
if somebody says to me, in your first 90 days, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to think they're a micromanager. And that may not be true, but for what I'm looking for in a role, they'll be too hands-on, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so I think it's really important questions like that. Can you tell me how you communicate when you're under stress? How do you communicate when you feel like I am not living up to my end of the social contract, right? How would I help make you successful in your role? And how would you help me be successful in mine? Those are all valid questions. And the number of people who've never thought of that when they're in an interview and you hit them with that question and they kind of go, oh, wow, let me think about this. And there's some who are like super excited that you asked that question. And they've like, oh, let's talk about this. You really probably want to work with that person.
Yeah.
Right? That is the
Yeah.
person you want to work with. But, you know, and I've had interviews go south or not even go south, had interviews go really well. And then I'm the second in choice. But the hiring manager calls me back and says, hey, I hate that you were a second choice, but you know, this person just had this much more experience in this area. Could I share your resume? I know this is not, you know, official, but can I connect you to a friend of mine in the industry who's looking for someone like you?
Wow.
Good interviews can still lead to good places, even if they don't lead to that job.
Yes. I agree with
Mhm,
you on that. I agree with you on
mhm,
that.
mhm,
Oh, what did you said something a minute ago though, and oh, so there's this. It's funny that you're mentioning some of this stuff because I
mhm.
have been listening to a lot of. I was listening to. Oh, was it Defense in Depth recently?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
they had the Walmart CISO on there,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And he
mhm,
mentioned something about how he likes he gave advice to people who were going into the field, right? And he was like, yes, you want to look for, this is the CEO speaking. He's saying, when you go into these interviews, you definitely want to hit at the beginning, like, let me know tell me as the CEO, as a CISO, what problem I'm having that you can fix.
mhm,
And he was
mhm,
like, don't wait till the end to ask your questions. Like, hit that up. Like, if when I
mhm,
ask you, tell me about yourself, ask me, well, can you tell me what kind of problems that you're hoping that I can resolve for you,
mhm,
or
mhm, mhm.
contribute to,
Yeah,
not contribute, you know what I
yeah,
mean, fix.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so I like
yeah.
that flip
Oh
of the
yeah.
script at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah,
And so,
absolutely. And that's I think that's important in any role you're in. Once you have the job, it's still important to ask answer that question.
mhm,
How do I fix this? What do I need to fix for my boss? Because there's a couple of things, right? Um, there is the don't bring me problems, bring me solutions kind of
right.
concept. I, as a manager, if you're bringing me a problem, I want you to have at least taken a stab at thinking through a solution, right? If you bring me a problem and the solution is always, oh, we just need to buy this technology,
Uh,
you've not really thought this through. Like,
yeah.
one of the things I want you to be able to say, what I want to hear as a manager is, we can get 80% of the way there by doing this. And then once that's successful, maybe if we buy this technology, we can get 95% of the way there. That's the kind of thought process that I want to see from you as a leader, if you're bringing me a problem, right? And there's
Yeah.
also a certain amount of, you know, I'm the manager. If I'm a manager, part of my role is to keep the shit from rolling downhill. Like, I am the umbrella. I am keeping upper management off of your back so that you can focus on your work. And then I should be asking you, how do you want to grow and how can I help you get there? Right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
I'm gonna I'm gonna give a lot more attention to the person who's bringing me solutions. Are you making my job easier? Or are you making my job harder? If you're making my job easier, I'm going to help you more simply because you're coming to me with solutions. But if all I hear from you is whining and we don't have this technology and this, I am going to be looking for a way to grow you out of my organization. Yeah.
I think that's funny. That go why it's so important, like the mentorship, right? Whether a company officially has a mentorship program or not, it's so important to get to find someone who can mentor you, but then also on the other side, find someone that you can mentor. Like and I get people who do that, and I've seen people who just don't share enough information in those relationships, and I'm always just like, what's the danger in it? And they always tell me, I'm not trying to give them the knowledge so that they can have my job or something like that. And I'm all
Right.
like,
Right.
so you want to stay stuck in this position forever? You're
Right.
okay, just
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But it's just, I'm not
Yeah.
like that. I'm not built like that, which is why this is here, is to share the
Yeah.
knowledge, to find people
Yeah.
like yourself to come on here and
Exactly.
share the knowledge with the folks and be like, let's lift each other
Yeah.
up. Let me do
Yeah.
my part. Let me do my part.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I get it.
Yeah.
Um, Carlota, I know we're getting here soon. I do want to ask you about Pocket
Mm,
CISO, though, if you don't mind talking a little bit
sure.
about that.
Okay, sure. When I left Robert Fractional, I took a few months off because I was really burnt out from pandemic. Both of my parents passed, not from COVID, thankfully. I had this really intense job for the last year, and it was just like I was non-functional for for a few months.
Yeah.
And then I was looking for a job, and my friends were all like, "But Carlota, you're so entrepreneurial. You should just start your own company." And the problem is I really hate working for myself. But you have to kind of trust people sometimes to go, okay, right? My friends see something, my friends and people I trust in business see something that I don't. So I started Pocket CISO to be a solo practitioner and grow my own company doing virtual CISO services. So I am the Pocket CISO, have a little security in your pocket, right? Um,
I
but what
like
I
that.
found, I really hate working for myself. Shocking. I knew this going into it. Um, I will actually be joining a 300-person consulting company in Australia in a matter of months, and relocating there to be closer to my favorite aunt, who is, getting a little older and doesn't have any children of her own. And I just like to get some, quality auntie time. And
Yeah.
it just seemed like the best of both worlds because I can move to Australia and have this amazing job with my dream team, and I can keep
Wow.
Pocket CISO right and some of those learnings and really start developing that knowledge base and community for those small mom and pop shops who can't afford a security person, but have the goal is to have them have a place where they can come to ask questions and get trusted answers. So I'm kind of low key on Pocket CISO right now. I have done a few projects. I have done a little bit of vCISO work this year, but I've been winding things down so I can join the Risk to Solutions group out in Australia and really kick some security butt for some small and mid-sized enterprises over there. So I'm super excited, but it's crazy time right now. So I will
Yeah.
maintain Pocket CISO as I feel like that's who I am. I'm my
Right.
brand. Um,
Totally.
yeah, and so I'm the Pocket CISO.
Oh,
For other CISOs, I've turned into the emotional support CISO.
I saw that on your. So I'd asked Carlota for just like a little bullet points of stuff, and she had that on there, and I was like, "Aw," the
Yeah.
emotional support for the others
So
there. So I was
yeah,
like,
that's it. That's it. It's has many um hardcore well-known CISOs who've told me that vCISO work is bullshit. There are literally 100 CISOs that have told me that they value what I do and they appreciate the work that I give
"Wow,
away, and they make it worth it. The small businesses I serve make it worth it, and that small handful of gatekeepers they can yeet themselves into the sun.
well,
Go do
look,
something
yeah,
productive.
I I love your heart towards
Oh.
the field, okay?
Mhm,
The industry. I
mhm.
love that heart. It is one that is after my own, or I'm after yours, however way you want to say it.
Yeah,
And it is just
we're
so
muy simpatico, right?
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, okay. And so I wish you nothing but the best. I
Thank
am glad that I got
you.
to hear from you and meet
Thank
you before
you.
you're leaving, before your departure. It sounds
Yes.
like it's going to be a fun ride, though, to be
Well, it's gonna
honest.
be I'm going somewhere I have a lot of food allergies, and now I'm going where everything is trying to kill me and not just food, so
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I won't say anything about any of those things, but yeah. Um,
yeah,
but if you ever, I'm always willing to help you out if you need
I
some help
appreciate
when you get out. If you
yeah,
over
yeah,
here in the States, anything to help
yeah,
out someone like you just,
yeah.
yeah, you're
Yeah,
amazing.
I
So,
appreciate it. Thank you.
um,
And you're amazing. I wouldn't have come if you were not just so
stop,
great and gave me
stop.
such great feedback. And yeah, when you told me what you were doing and how you're helping folks, trying to get into the industry. I do work with. I used to be on the board of directors of the Diana Initiative, which is an inclusivity in cybersecurity organization. I work a lot with the women of Women's Society of Cyberjutsu, who are amazing, amazingly diverse. I think that is the most diverse group I've ever worked with, and amazing people. Mary Galloway, big shout out to her, Marcelli. Love the Cyberjutsu women. Janai Marenkovic at grcie.org. Work with her as much as I can. There are some really great groups out there that if you're looking to get into cybersecurity and you are a woman, a minority, a person of color, an LGBTQIA, or whatever all the, sorry, I don't mean to be flippant, but whatever all of the word, acronyms are now, there's a place for you here. And even when people tell you, as long as you're not being toxic, right? Whenever anyone who says to you, you don't belong, you belong. You just haven't figured out how yet. You haven't found us, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, Carlota. What I like to do with my guests who come on is I want to give them, and maybe you already did this, but I kind of did it in a roundabout way. I like to give you an opportunity to kind of share any message you want to talk about here for just a couple of seconds here. So, business, a message for everyone. If you need more, I want to offer that to you.
Follow me on LinkedIn. I'm not doing a lot of social media outside of LinkedIn these days. I will, once I get that Pocket CISO community up and running, I'll let folks know to join me there. Right now, I am just trying to pack everything up and trying to say goodbye to the people I love. And there are so many, and a lot of them are in this industry. I think that if you're new to cybersecurity, you're going to find some amazing people that will just become lifelong friends completely accidentally. And I think that whatever your background is, you're bringing value to an industry that desperately needs it. So just keep going forward. It doesn't feel like you've made very much progress until one day you look back and it's like, wow, I've done pretty good. So just keep going. Keep going. We're out here. We're cheering you on.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a pleasure, Carlota. I'm going to put you in the green room and then end the show, and then I'm going to bring you back out, and you and I will have a chat for a little bit after the show, okay?
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you so much, Carlota. Y'all, I run another YouTube show, right? And we over there, it's not cybersecurity related, but we always meet people who have a niche in life, or we shine a spotlight on someone who we want to highlight for whatever reasons, right? And usually there's a lot of people who I've met. Carlota would be included in that group. It's like when I get to the end of that show, there are times where people it's been hard not to smile throughout this entire episode, and my cheeks are in so much pain right now. I'm like, it hurts to keep smiling, but it is like that's how I'm feeling. I've been so excited to have Carlota on the show. I was excited throughout this entire process, and I felt like her knowledge and her sharing, her spirit, her energy, all that stuff was just like, for me, it just hits on so many points, and it makes me feel so glad. I'm so elated to find that when you find people who are like yourself, you get excited for that, right? And that's how I feel tonight, is like just someone who, all that energy, and then she's just shared so much information tonight that is helpful on so many different levels. Like I said, I know that I usually do PCI stuff, but this, I feel like, not just related to PCI aspects, right? Maybe some of those soft skills, for example, or some of the knowledge in the head that's not the technical pieces. But I wanted to participate in Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and I think that Carlota was able to perfectly, for me, allow me to contribute to that. And so I hope that you all were just as encouraged as I was, that you got something out of here. Feel free to throw comments in there. If you're watching this on the replay, I hope you enjoyed the time here. If you think that you have an idea for a topic this month that deals with cybersecurity awareness, let me know. Message me privately, and let's talk and see if we can get you on here also. I am excited for the upcoming weeks because I do have some other professionals in the cybersecurity realm who are going to come on. I've got a threat modeler. I've got someone in AI. I've got a cybersecurity insurance specialist who's going to be coming on. And all of these people are going to contribute to cybersecurity on some level, right? I'm also going to be doing some pieces or videos where I'm going to talk about some components that help families take care of their cybersecurity at home, right? There's an app I use, for example, it's called Bark. I'm going to be talking about that this month. It's a way to help monitor your children's access while they're using their mobile phones or their laptops. We're going to be talking about things to do at home so that you can protect your little ones and yourself, so that we're just being more conscientious about it. We're going to empower you and educate you as best we can over here. Okay. So with that being said, everyone, I love you all. I appreciate you all coming over here, hanging out with us, and spending time with us. And if you have any other questions or any other thoughts, please feel free to let me know. Okay. All right, Cyber Gangsters, y'all have a good night.